Nebraska Arts Council decided that we could sweeten the pot a little bit. We really have been impressed with the work that Dave has done in the other states, and we feel that this can be a real life-changing experience in the life of a community. So when you're putting together your funding sources, you know, there's a price tag to all of this, but I'm really glad that Dave went through the entire process so you can see that there is a pretty intensive amount of work that's involved, and it's well worth the price tag, which I think is pretty minimal. But nevertheless, I recognize it's difficult to raise money in any community. So what you can do just off the get-go is you just plug in to your budget $6,000 from the Nebraska Arts Council. Now, as you know, we're only doing one mural. So if you're selected, then we will talk to you about getting you those funds. If you're not selected, well, obviously there's nothing more to do. So we're hoping that provides you with some incentive and helps to kind of break it down so that if you have to make several calls in your community to put together your funding package, you can come in and say, well, we've gotten $6,000 from the Nebraska Arts Council, therefore we only need to raise $13,000 more. So that's the deal, and I can answer any questions either now or if you want to call me directly, that will be fine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's go ahead and open it up for questions from anyone. You can ask questions on the chat screen online, or if you'd like to unmute your phone and ask a question over the phone, that'd be great too.
This is Suzanne Brodeen in Kearney. I was just noticing the projects that had been done in previous years were entirely a completely flat wall. So is there some sort of size and or shape? We had a couple of different areas that we were looking at proposing for, but some of them do have openings in them, emergency exit or something like that. So are there conditions that we need to take into account? Is there a minimum or maximum size of that space, those sorts of requirements?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is Dave. There's no problem with working around, doorways and windows to a certain extent. We're looking for relatively large walls. I'll give you just a sort of roundabout figure, maybe, 12 feet to 15 feet by 70 or 80 would be like a average. We've had walls that were 30 feet by 80 feet. We're working on, we've worked on ones that are 12 by 120 feet. Anything larger than that is going to be hard to complete in the time that we have. A little bit smaller would be fine. We're looking for walls that are in good condition and that don't have any, really deep textural features, in brick and so on, because that'll just interrupt the surface of the painting. But, in your applications, Megan, you can chime in on this too. We're asking folks to make suggestions just so that we have an idea that you're looking around and you've identified some spots. And the walls are important, but also the context. Who are going to see these things? What are the sight lines? Is the relationship with the owner of the property going to be, easy? Those are as important as the wall itself, I think.
So you don't have a specific, preference or need to either have one that's been sealed over or stuccoed over. It can be the exposed brick as long as it's not a huge textural difference between, say, the tuck pointing the brick surface or the ridges of stucco and the flat portion of that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, right. And actually, this might sound, I don't know, we'll see. I prefer working on original building materials, meaning like brick or cinder block, especially up here in the Midwest where we have big freeze-thaw cycles. A lot of times the stuccoing or the gunite that goes on top of masonry is really vulnerable to being popped off by our freeze-thaw cycle, and I see, unfortunately, a lot of murals in the Midwest that have fallen victim to that. So we're going to probably look for something that's in real stable condition.
Have questions from anyone else?
Sorry, this is Suzanne and Carney again. Just looking at the guidelines then for the project that you sent out, it says there's a couple areas where it says specifically coordinate, as in the housing for the artists when they come in, not provide. So I just want to clarify that we're going to arrange for their housing, but we're not necessarily including a budget item for that. Is that correct, or should we include payment for that housing as well if necessary?
Actually, on your application, if you have some ideas or have made some efforts in planning for housing, I'd go ahead and include that. I don't think you necessarily need to include it in the budget. If there is a particular cost that you're incurring, like if you are having to pay rent on a house or something like that, then I would include it. But if it's completely in kind, then I don't know that that's really necessary. But what we're really looking for in these applications is to see that there's been some pre-planning and you've got some ideas in place if you're chosen.
But it would be a vision of housing. We're not just making arrangements for it. We're finding and either getting an in-kind contribution of housing, or we're securing and paying for that housing. I just want to make sure that word coordinate.
Oh, sure. I see what you're saying. Yes. Yes, the community, the host, would be responsible for providing or coordinating housing for Dave, the mural apprentice, and the mural assistant. So 3 people.
Okay.
Typically in past, and Dave, I think you can speak better to this point than I can, but it's been a really excellent way for Dave to kind of get to know the community a little bit better. If they're in the past they've lived with the host or someone else in the community who has been able to provide a house or an apartment or something like that.
Okay.
Dave, you want to chime in a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent here is there's twofold. One is we don't want to stay in a hotel on the edge of town or anything like that. That's not going to help us in terms of getting to know the community. We want to be, as they say these days, embedded, right, in the place that we're working. So that's number one. The other thing is we know that in a lot of communities there are some folks who would love to be able to support the project, but they may not be able to go to design meetings or even give straight-up cash, but they might have an apartment that they're not using, or a portion of a house, or maybe somebody's going on vacation for the summer or something like that, and they can become integral and supportive of the project in another way. So we're trying to give the opportunity for other folks in these communities to really have stakeholding in the project.
Does that help answer your question? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.